Hi everyone. So we are now going to start the lecture 19 of this course, which is Indian economy, some contemporary perspective. Now we will be moving to financial sector, and this particular sector is very important because it consists of and it captures the whole landscape of what we call it as the financial sector development. And we will be spending some more time because this particular topic is going to take some more time in terms of covering up recent developments. But particularly lecture 19 and 20 will be focusing more on the earlier development and the banking sector. So lecture 19 is mainly meant for understanding the developments in the banking sector, how since independence we have progressed, what kind of developments that we had to undertake and we had to experience, and how government of India had to go for revisiting the model of the development that we had envisaged. Now, apart from the banking sector, maybe lecture 20 will cover some aspects of the banking regulation, because this is also one of the areas where we are looking for certain improvements. And post 2008-9 global financial crisis, there is a whole lot of debate and discussion on the macroprudential role and the role of the central bank in devising certain regulatory norms, so that we can avoid the uncertain situations in future. And those norms are now being stipulated in the form of the financial stability report. So if you go on the RBI website, you will find a report called financial stability report, and it captures and it provides a signal to the financial health of the financial system. Now, if you trace the history of India's financial system, then it is basically based on the banking sector development. So we are more into the banking sector led economic growth, or so there is some differences among the academicians and the researchers, that whether it is growth led financial development or the financial development led economic growth development. So those topics we will be touching up, and then we will be also trying to cover certain important developments in the history of India's banking sector, and that is about the nationalization process, pre 1991 developments, how banking sector was in pre 1991, and then we will be covering the periods of post reform period. And in post reform periods we have a lot to cover because it touches upon the recent periods also. So I will try to give you as much background as I can in next half an hour or 25 minutes, and then we will be moving to the further details about the banking sector that we have been regulating and experiencing, and also towards the extent that how in 2016 we had to experience some kind of very awkward moment in the Indian banking history, when we had to go for or experience a very downward movement in the asset prices of the banks, and that resulted in a complete chaos, and finally government of India had to go for consolidation of banks. There is also an important committee that a special mention here, that is called Narasimham Committee report, and it has part 1, part 2. So in 1992 and then 1998, and this particular committee had recommended a lot in terms of changing the contours of India's banking sector, how banking sector should be, and whether we can incorporate new changes or not. Now, keeping that in mind, I will be trying to cover up as many topics as I can. So here I have referred a few materials that I thought I should be mentioning, and it is Rakesh Mohan. He is an authority in the area of the monetary system in India, and he writes a lot. He has written in the past, and he is still interested in these topics. So if you are interested, you can read the report of financial sector reforms in India, policies and performance analysis. Then T.G. Arun has written a good article. It is mentioned financial sector reforms in developing countries, the Indian experience, and it highlights the role of financial sector development. So, and then I have referred the 20 years of economic reforms in India by Suri. I have also referred the edited book of Ashima Goyal, Handbook of the Indian Economy in 21st Century. And then I found Shirai S., the assessment of Indian banking sector reforms from the perspective of governance of the banking sector, and this particular also paper provides a deep insight about the India's regulatory framework of the banking and how evolution of the banking sector has taken place in India. So, these references might be useful for the people who are deeply interested, and if they want to explore more about this particular topic that I am going to discuss. So, the key learning objective is that to understand the banking sector developments and how we can correlate with the historical developments and how the regulations in the banking sector have evolved over a period of time. So, the debate in the field of economics starts with the role of financial sector development. So, whether the financial sector development leads to better economic growth and development, or it is just the reverse, which means that if the GDP is increasing, then this leads to a better financial services and financial development in a country, or in a way that first let's develop the financial sector, and then once the financial sector is developed, then it creates extra opportunity, and that extra opportunity may translate into a better growth and development. So, there are either one way causal relationship between economic growth and financial development, or both ways. So, these two arguments are well argued by the economist, and there are differences with regard to the developed economies and developing economies. The King and Levine paper in 1993 gave the idea of how we can give importance to financial sector development in fostering economic growth. And at that time, the idea was that in the context of each and every country, the pattern of financial sector development changes, in the sense that in most of the countries during 1950s and which got independent during 1950s were influenced more by the socialistic pattern, which means that the regulated economy, and there was a lot of hurdles with regard to the pursuance of the liberalization policies. So, the economic development was not as quick or as fast as in some of the countries which had adopted the market based economy it was experienced. So, that is why the relationship between financial sector development and economic growth varies between, or it is dependent on the nature of the economy that we are considering. So, in case of India, it is the case that in the beginning the banking sector scope was limited, and then when we expanded, and then when economy was expanded, and then we took measures to revive the economy or to expand the economy, then the financial sector expanded quickly, and then it helped in sustaining the high growth. So, keeping those dimensions in mind, we also thought that we should be knowing about the role of financial sector, and in the formative years of the economy in any country, the role of the financial sector normally it is about mobilizing the saving and translating that saving into a efficient investment. So, those roles are important to understand, and India also took measures in that regard. India also took steps to make sure that the financial intermediation remained a facilitator of the growth process. So, in the late in the 50s and the late 50s, even in 60s, we had DFIs, developmental financial institutions in India, which means that these institutions were entrusted with the task to support the industrial growth process of the country and provide long term financing opportunities for more than 10 years, 15, 20 years. And DFIs, developmental financial institutions, played key role, because each and every country, even in the West and even in Europe, these institutions played a role. So, India also took measures and developed development of financial institutions, and those institutions later, due to the regulated market system, when the economy was opened, these institutions felt the impact of the market oriented system, and then ultimately these institutions had to be adopted as a bank, and they were then further transformed into a full time or a proper commercial bank. So when the economy progresses, it leads to certain changes in the economy, and as a result, the financial institutions also incorporate those changes, and they also try to adjust with the new pattern in the economy. So we also saw in the case of India. In the 60s, late 60s, and in the 80s, we took measures of nationalization. So we had gone for the nationalization of banks, because it was felt that since the task for the government was to implement certain socio-economic objectives, and even to go for the rapid industrialization process, at that time the government took measures, and they felt that the banking process was not completely oriented for such a rapid industrialization, and that is why some of the private banks were forced and they were nationalized. Then the government of India also took measures on the financing, which means the credit facilitation in terms of credit creation, and in that case they had gone for a rationalization of interest rates, certain deposit ratios, liquidity ratios, and ultimately it benefited the sector in terms of giving sufficient supply of the credit. Then we also, in the pre-reform period, since the economy was regulated by most of the large firms, and the large firms had a major say in terms of the banking sector, and the banking sector was also more obliged to the large banks, and that's why when we had to take the liberalization measures, and when in 1980s, mid of 1980s, when the government of India took measures to go for the market oriented economy with more participation of the private sector, then government had to accept the change, and then they allowed the private sector to function, and then we had a huge a change in the composition of the financial sector in the country. Then post reform period saw complete stark changes in terms of the financial sector developments, as we had not only a banking sector in terms of public sector banks and the private sector banks, but also we allowed the non banking financial companies to operate. Then we had different options given to investors for investment. For example, we had gone for mutual funds, then our capital market was developed capital market also provided incentives. So post 2000, the financial sector of India was a well diversified financial sector, and then we started focusing on whether we should focus on outreach of the financial services that we were providing to urban masses, and then we started focusing on expanding to the rural areas and unbanked population. Then during in post 2000 period, we also took measures to align our banking system with the international system, and then in that process we took measures for the Basel norms. So international bank for settlement. So there we had gone for implementation of certain norms for the banking regulation. For example, Basel II was implemented quite efficiently. Basel III, because of the pandemic, we have postponed, and it may be implemented in 2023. So those changes, regulatory changes, market discipline, supervisory norms, disclosure requirement, capital adequacy norms, implementation, and even in India had gone for adoption of higher level of capital adequacy ratio compared to the other countries, and that's why the strength of the banking sector was more on the mobilization of savings, facilitating the financial services to the large populace. So this aim gave a lot of boost to the banking sector, and as a result, now in the post 2010 era, we are seeing India's banking sector as one of the most diversified in the world, and we have enormous opportunity. But the regulatory system or the regulated banks have failed in some aspects, especially in terms of regulating the default on the sanctioned loans, and that resulted in a 2016 what we call it as twin balance sheet crisis. So I will be discussing those topics again, but let's have the historical perspective. So if you try and understand the financial sector, what all institutions are covered in this, then we find that it is rural banks. So first is the commercial banks that we have, both public and private. Then we have rural banks, then we have cooperative banks, then we have credit institutions, then we have development of finance, then we have then we have a non-banking financial institutions that we call it as NBFCs, and both deposit taking, non-deposit taking, those who are in leasing and other businesses. And then we have a mutual funds, pension funds and insurance companies. So, the whole landscape of the financial sector in India consists of these institutions, and that is why it is important that we should be focusing on understanding each and every component. And some components, for example, rural banks, RRBs, which was set up in 1975, we have already covered when we were discussing the agriculture sector, the financing in agriculture sector, and that is why even cooperative banks to some extent we had covered. Then we had credit institutions, development finance institutions. Development finance institutions we will be covering today much. So this table tells about the financial development. So here you have financial ratio, what is the, which means that the ratios in terms of the short term and long term borrowing happening, or the credit facilitation provided by financial institutions. So financial development upon the growth, economic growth, and then we find that it is higher, 0.75. It was in the beginning 1951-52 it was 0.75, then it reached to 17.15, and then we had 33, and then it has in 1991-92 it reached up to 41. Similarly, financial interrelation ratio, which means that financial development in terms of both money and capital and upon the physical investment, and this also shows the increase in number. So this also shows the same, and here again the intermediation ratio means how much the money market and the capital market has contributed. This also we see a complete intermediation, means those institutions which are in the intermediation sector. So maybe banks, NBFCs and all the institutions. So here also we are finding that the ratio is increasing continuously. And new issue, which means that in terms of the capital market in the 1951-52 we had very limited scope for the capital market development, and we find that from 1970 onwards we started experiencing something, and till 1991-92 we had the value reached up to 1.28. So the overall picture looks promising because we have progressed well, and we have seen major changes in terms of improvement in financial services and financial ratios, and that is why it looks it may be called as better for the. So as we have progressed in terms of GDP growth, financial sector has also progressed, and that is why it becomes really important to focus. If you go for the analysis of the, so I have got this from the Rakesh Mohan paper, and I found, just to give you some kind of background. So here it is 1969. So 9 is an extra, and here it is banking, BANKING, not baking, and here it is June 1980. Then we have March 1991, March 1995, then March 2000 and March 2003. Here we can see in terms of the number of commercial banks in June 1969, when he had gone for nationalization, it was 73, then it reached to 154, then we had a 272, then it has reached to March 2003 292. Then here now number of bank offices, so that also see you can see there is tremendous increase, especially March 1991 we see a bigger jump, and that could be because most of the banks were having there were a lot of reforms initiatives undertaken at that time, and might be it was a phase where it was just a beginning of the major change happening. Then out of this we have rural and semi-urban areas. Out of 8,262 we have 5,172, and out of 34 it was 23,000, and out of 60,000 we had a 46,000 here. So this also has shown, but after the March 2000 it shows some kind of a stabilization, but compared to 1980 we see almost the double of the number of rural and semi-urban branches. Population per thousand office, this also we see increase. Per capita deposit, if you see, so this also has increased, it has gone to 12,253. Per capita credit also it has increased 7,275, which means that there is a whole lot of financial deepening process that we see. So this we can call it as a healthy financial deepening process. Then priority sector advances, which means that we have agriculture and other sectors as priority sector. There also we see continuously here we see some aberrations. For example, in 1969 it was 15%. Then in June 80 it reached up to 37. Then again it was mild increase, and then we see some kind of correction here, 33.7, and that could be because of in March 1995 the scenarios were different. We were more focused on the industrialization process, and the priority sector advances were quite low, and this has resulted again in the deceleration. In terms of deposit as a percentage of national income, this also we see increase, and though there is a moderation, but March 2000 we had the increase. Now these tables clearly shows that the banking sector in India has played a constructive role in terms of facilitating, but post 2005 or 6 we saw a major change in the banking sector landscape. We saw a huge amount of banking operations taking place in the remote areas of the country, and that has changed the entire outlook of the banking sector. Now here Banking Regulation Act BRA was implemented in 1949. So this was the first Banking Regulation Act India had implemented. Right, government owned banks, also called the public sector banks, had a special kind of I would say provisions in terms of not only just mobilization of saving, but also in terms of participation in industrial activities. The public sector banks had so basically SBI was regulated under the SBI Act, and its subsidiaries were regulated under 1959 Act, but now most of the subsidiaries of SBI now merged with the SBI, and now it is just one entity. And nationalized banks are regulated under the Banking Companies Act 1970s and 1980s. So that gives them a different kind of regulatory framework compared to the State Bank of India. Now if you trace the history, then I have already mentioned this, that during at the time of independence we had a large number of banks, and most of these banks had a fragmented business activities. Most of the banks were owned by a large business houses, and these banks were simply serving the purpose of those houses or I would say business promoters. But when Government of India took measures in terms of going for rapid industrialization, then at that time it was felt that until and unless we will have the proper banking structure that will support the or that will provide the sufficient cushion for the development or financial or that will help in expanding the in terms of credit services, then only it will be fruitful, or the objectives of the planning process will be materialized. Otherwise it will be difficult. So in the Indira Gandhi government at that time had nationalized 14 major commercial bank, and it was also possible some of the reviewers or the researchers have argued that one of the reasons was not just the planning process, but it was also one of the reasons that the country was devastated with the wars with China and Pakistan. Then the country was also going through a severe drought, higher inflation. Inflation has reached or had passed 20%, and then at that time there was also a famine kind of situation in the country. So at that time the domestic scenarios were not that much favorable, and the government was in need of financing the industrial activities, financing the economic activities, and that's why it became really difficult for the government to work with the privately owned banks, and that's why this drive was possible. So 20th July 1969 nationalized 14 major commercial banks, and these banks included these. So one was Allahabad Bank, Bank of Baroda, Bank of India, Bank of Maharashtra. Then we had a Central Bank of India, Canara Bank, Dena Bank, Indian Overseas Bank, and then we had a Punjab National Bank, Syndicate Bank, UCO Bank, and Union Bank, United Bank of India. So these banks were nationalized, and it was a controversial. It became a controversial subject because some of the bank promoters were not happy with the decision of the government, and finally since it was decision of the Prime Minister, so it was supposed to be accepted. Then the second phase of nationalization is started, and this nationalization phase it started on April 16, 1980. So, 6 more banks were nationalized, and these banks were the Andhra Bank Limited, Corporation Bank Limited. Then we also has New Bank of India Limited, Oriental Bank of Commerce, Punjab and Sindh Bank Limited, and the Vijay Bank Limited. Now, this particular, so overall what I would like to say that in terms of the nationalization of banks, these two events are very much important for understanding the India's banking sector landscape, and that's why so let me summarize what we have done. So, we have just gone through the background of in India's banking sector or financial sector reforms. We have just covered the landscape, that how what all components are there, and we have started talking about the nationalization process. In the next session, we will be talking about the banking sector reforms that we undertook and how it has helped in terms of developing the diversified banking sector. Thank you so much.